over halfway through the year, we're now into July, and we're on to season 5 of Buffy. This was a divisive season. Whenever a new character is introduced to a show well after the beginning, in a way that, like an extra character who theoretically should have been there all along, people do get a variety of reactions. There is the uncertainty, which I had. There's derision, and in some cases outright hate. But I don't think that hate should have ever been, and should never be, directed at Michelle Trachtenberg herself. This is a decision made by the showrunners and writers. So, if anyone's ever levelled any hate at Michelle Trachtenberg, feel bad. Like I say, I was uncertain, Harriet the Spy in Buffy, but I gave it the chance, and certainly, like I say, didn't blame her. But this was very much a season of moving away from the faltering steps of season 4. Season 4 got us into a more adult world. But season 5 is where it really went, no, really, we're adults now. Let's move forward with not just metaphorical evils. Let's move forward with actual evils. Let's move forward with deeper ideas. Because as the characters are growing up and aging, so is the fan base. Yes, of course, kids are going to still be watching who were like fairly young when it first started. But for the most part, the hardcore fans were young adults, and therefore experiencing a very similar situation to Buffy and the crew. This was also a very hard season for a lot of people, not because of the mystical kid sister angle, but because we got the loss of... there are some people out there who have like a fake family of TV people. I've experienced it with fake uncles and aunts and stuff. But Joyce Summers to many was our TV mom. She was the trying to understand, trying to be patient, trying to be cool. Just, a mother who was trying to be there for her daughter. And I think that resonated with a lot of people. I've seen Christine Sutherland at cons and stuff like that, and she is as warm and outgoing as Joyce Summers is. And yeah, it's really a hard episode. The Body is one of the worst episodes of TV, and I mean that in the nicest way. Practically scoreless throughout. It just doesn't hold your hand. This was a definite conscious choice. It doesn't allow you to fall back on what the music's telling you to do or anything like that. And it uses very interesting angles, very raw, very close angles, and certain sort of effects are used in certain places. And it really just follows this path of grief. But I do want to cover that more, I think, as a highlight. There is a lot to say about that episode. All of it, in praise. But the biggest, or one of the big issues, I suppose, because the biggest issue obviously was Dawn, but linked to that, a lot of people weren't, and I think entirely on board with the whole Ben Glory situation. You need, in a show like this, to keep upping the stakes. So you've had like big bad vampire, two pretty bad vampires, big mayor snake, Frankensteinian creation. Where do you go from that? Well, why not a literal god who has been trapped in a mortal's body? And this was one of those that I think, again, people weren't sure. I mean, again, Claire Kramer did a great job. I've never met Claire Kramer, but I wouldn't be surprised if she's absolutely as loopy as Glory, in a different way. I don't think she's sucking people's brains out to bolster her own mental fortitude, but she does it so well. And, the dichotomy between Ben and Glory, the fact that they don't really have full cognizance of each other, what they've done necessarily. They'll often just find themselves in a weird location wearing clothes that they wouldn't be seen dead in normally. And, whilst it's sometimes sort of played for laughs, it is played as a very difficult thing for Ben to have to deal with. He didn't wish for this. It wasn't a choice he made. This choice was made for him. He was the vessel, whether he likes it or not. And, so we do get another sort of heavy moment of Tara's, sort of mind being sucked out of her. She is rendered incapable of functioning, and Willow becomes almost like a full-time carer for her. And it's such a hard sort of piece to watch, because you can see how she still has the fears, and there's still an element of Tara deep inside, but she just can't come out. She can't say anything. She can't explain what's going on. And you know, it's very difficult for Willow to deal with. It's very difficult for everyone. And I think anyone who's suffered with any kind of severe psychotic episodes would sympathise. You know, there are a lot of times, I think, with people who have various psychoses where you want to do something, but you kind of feel like, it's a weird metaphor, but it's kind of like you're in a mech, but you're not controlling the mech. The mech's on autopilot. You're just there looking out of, you know, the window or whatever at the destruction you're causing, but you can't do anything about it. It's like if, you know, the Jaegers in Pacific Rim are on autopilot and you're just watching what they're doing, trapped inside, not able to do anything. That's what some psychoses can feel like. And that's not fun. And I think, as much as I love Amber Benson, there are moments that I don't think she was nailing how she could have acted. There's a lot of fine-tuning that she could have done to her sort of crazy acting, I suppose. But she did what she could. You know, she did what she could with the tools and what have you available to her. And, you know, she tried her best, at least. But of course, I do sort of want to briefly touch on a few of the other great parts of this season, which is the, well, firstly, the April bot, which was a very weird episode, but then, of course, that led us into the Buffy bot, which was also then part of Spike's falling for Buffy in spite of himself scenario, and that was just beautiful. There was a lot to love in this episode. In this season, with regards to that, you know, the relationship between Spike and Buffy getting more and more serious, and of course getting the counterpart to Darla in this season as well, where we saw that played differently. Again, a lot of these episodes that have those kind of moments, I think, are highlight episodes, but I'd be remiss not to talk about them. But I do want to finish with, again, something that will be expanded upon next time. But the end of the year, the season finale, and the whole implications of that. You know, it was massively publicised at the time, like Buffy dies. You know, it was like Buffy dies at the end. We're that's it. We're done, possibly, but not really. You know, we knew they were coming back, but how do you come back when the person who your show is named for is dead? Now, of course, this is a world of mysticism and magic, and therefore resurrection spell. But we didn't know that. You know, this was this big, heroic end. Rather than killing her sister, who, despite her, you know, original misgivings, and, you know, when she found out that she wasn't real, it was like, you're not really my sister, and this whole kind of issue around that. She'd grown to love her because she was still created from Buffy. The monks sent the key to Buffy, using an element of her so that she would nurture and protect it, which is really manipulative and wrong, but I can see their logic. But she realises that if Dawn's blood would steal the key, and Dawn's blood was made out of Buffy's blood should do. And, you know, she has this whole thing about, you know, you don't need to die. We can make the world a better place if I do it. You know, there's other Slayers out there, I'm sure. Another one will be called. You know, I think she forgot that, you know, she's technically died, and, you know, Faith is the prime Slayer now, I would argue, so she'd need to die for a new one. But this is Buffy's show, it bears her name, and therefore we'll give her a bit of ego there. But, you know, the heroic moment where she just leaps off after saying, you know, the hardest thing to do in this world is live in it, which is great. You know, I love the life lesson there. It's a season that acknowledges that people die, bad things happen, but through all this adversity, do you know what works? Pushing through. You know, when Buffy goes into a catatonic state, because the weight of the world, as the episode title says, is literally upon her shoulders. She can't deal with this. She needs to push through, and she does eventually. And that's why I think she has that realization, that wisdom that she imparts onto Dawn. And it's such a beautiful, beautiful moment. You know, it's played up, the music's great. But of course, this episode we also got to see a little more of Ripper. We got to see the pragmatic side of Giles. Ben is a problem. Problems need to be erased. So I'm going to do that. And it was a really, really dark moment. And I'm glad we got that. I think the reaction to that was what led to the darkness that we experienced through season 6. They knew people were ready for it. But that's all I want to say, because like I say, there's so many episodes that I do want to cover in detail, and I don't want to basically splurge it all out here and give you no reason to watch that. Purely selfish reasons. So I will leave it there for the overview, and in a few weeks' time we'll be back to discuss, like I say, The Gift, the I Was Made to Love You, all those kind of things. So please come back for that and enjoy everything in between. But until next time, as always, thank you for watching and take care.